Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie, host and head bookologist here at the Get Literate podcast. I'm a book loving, notebook hoarding reader and writer on a mission to change lives one book and one notebook at a time. On this podcast, we explore the power of bookology. What's that? That's the study of books and reading and notebooks and writing mixed with mindful practices and creativity to create lives we love. Here, you'll find episodes exploring the reading and writing life and how they can make our actual lives better. You'll get book recommendations and notebooking prompts around particular themes, and you'll even hear from authors and special guests who can fuel our reading and writing hearts and help us take inspired action in our own daily practices. So, grab a notebook and your TBR list, and let's get literate. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Get Literate podcast. I'm Stephanie, your host and head bookologist, as always, here to talk about how reading and writing can make life better. But today I am doing an episode that I have never done before. Today I'm doing an Ask Me Anything episode. I love when my favorite podcasters do an Ask Me Anything episode, and I particularly love when they actually answer one of the questions that I have asked or have posed to them before. Now, ever since the podcast started, I have been collecting questions that come in, whether that's email or social media or the audio message recording. I've been collecting these and I've been holding on to them. Sometimes those questions turn into full-blown episodes, and sometimes they turn into responses on social media, and sometimes they just stay right in my Google Keep sticky note for when I have an opportunity to answer them. And I've got enough of them now that I thought it is time for the very first Ask Me Anything episode. Now, the one thing I wish I did differently as I was collecting these questions is to take better care with who asked them and when. Because what I love about Ask Me Anything episodes is that typically the podcaster reveals who asked the question and sometimes even plays the audio feed. I know when Gretchen Rubin played my question I had for her, or actually read my question I had, oh my gosh, I was like a little kid on Christmas, so excited to hear her and Liz talk through my question. But unfortunately, I didn't do that. As a new podcaster, I didn't quite think of what I might want later when I finally get the chance to have an Ask Me Anything episode. So today's questions are just generic, if you will, questions that I've been asked by real people, but I didn't actually save the details for. But now I know better. And when you know better, you can do better. And I will keep much better track of who asked them and ask if I have permission to read their email word for word or to play their audio recording. So if you have a question today that I didn't answer or one that comes up as a result of listening to this episode, email me. Find me on social media at AffinitoLit. Click that audio button in your favorite podcast platform and send me a message. And let me know if it's okay to talk about your question on the live podcast. That way, I will be able to give a little kudos to you and a little thanks for asking such a wonderful question. So now, these questions today, they are all pretty random because I've been collecting them for a while. Some are questions like, what's your favorite fill in the blank? And others are questions like, how do you do X? Or why do you do X? And all of them, of course, are evolved around reading and writing, and maybe even just integrating both of those things into our lives. So they're not in any order, although I do try to go back and forth between reading and writing to keep that fun ping pong ball effect. And I just thought we'd have some fun going through about, oh, I don't know, maybe 16, 17 or so questions. Now, these questions are not lengthy. If they were, I would have turned each of them into a separate podcast. Although I'm preparing for this episode, I realized I need to create a couple of separate podcasts for these because I could go much deeper. So, without further ado, let's just have a fun episode together talking Q&A around reading and writing. Number one, how many books do you read in a year? Now, this question I hate because for a long time, I never felt like I read enough books as compared to all of my favorite podcasters and book bloggers. But as I talk about and as I realize, it isn't how many books you read, it's how you read them. It's, do you enjoy them? Do you give yourself the time to indulge in them? Do you read the books that you want to read and abandon the ones that you don't? So that it's not the number that's most important, it's the effect they are having on you. It's kind of why I don't like rating books in the typical star fashion, because a reader's experience with a book is personal. It goes beyond the words on the page, and it is almost impossible to evaluate the words at face value without our interpretation of them based on who we are and where we are in this season of life. So instead, I like to rate in a heart scale. So I don't really like the traditional conventions of how we measure our reading life, but I will tell you that now at this point in my life, kids are grown. I have a job that requires me to read children's literature, and I have a podcast that holds me accountable to lots of reading. I'm consistently reading a little over 100 books per year. Now, that's a huge number, right? Some of it's children's literature, some of it is picture books, some are those big, lengthier books. But keep in mind, a good part of my day is dedicated to reading. My first goal I had was just to read a book a month once I had little kids, and I didn't even get that goal very often. It does depend on the season of life that you are in, but that's pretty much where I am at the moment. Question two. Do you really have 9 notebooks? I really have 9 notebooks, and in fact, I really have more than that. I love my notebooks. I love my notebooks, and I love using different notebooks for different purposes. I just really love having a dedicated notebook for a particular intention in my life. That does not work for everyone. Some people need one notebook where everything gets dumped in. I would rather have a gorgeous stack of them that I know each has a purpose. So I have my morning page notebook that I write in pretty much every single morning. I have my podcast notebook where I plan out all of my episodes by hand. I have my quote notebook where I lift the lines I love from the books that I'm reading so that I can hang on to them. I have a 5-year journal where I write one thing every single day that is good that I want to hold on to. I have a professional notebook for work and all the meeting notes and the things that I have to plan and the courses I have to create. I have a podcast calendar slash notebook where I do all of the planning and the busy work and the production end of things. I also have a new yoga notebook, which is where I keep all of my notes for my yoga teacher training, and I analyze yoga classes and I create new sequences for classes. It's like my new fun obsession, especially since Amy W., a longtime Get Literate listener and good friend now, sent me these wonderful little sticky note, no, not sticky note, stick figure stickers. So they are stick figures in particular yoga poses so that you can use stickers to plan out your yoga class. Oh my gosh, it is so much fun. I also have another notebook that is in my purse for anything else that comes up, and I also have a writing notebook for the books I'm actually working on. I lost count if that were 9 or not, but those are the notebooks that I write in regularly. Now, please note, I do not write in each one of these every single day. There are 2 that I write in every day, my morning page notebook and my 5-year journal. All of the others just depend on what I'm doing. If I found a quote I love, I get out that notebook. If I'm planning the podcast, get out that notebook. If I'm taking my yoga um, class that day, then I get out that notebook. So I do not feel any sort of guilt or any sort of pressure to write in all of the notebooks I have every day. I really don't. They just sit there in this beautiful stack and I pull out the ones that I need. So, yes, I really, really do have them. I just don't write in them every single day. Question number three is a fun one. Do you have any pre reading rituals? Pre reading rituals. I love this. What do you do before you pick up the book? Well, I am a person who loves taking a look at the cover. If it is a picture book or a hardcover with a jacket, I will always take that jacket off and see what's underneath. I typically read the back, including the summary and all of the reviews. I read the inside cover flap. I always go to the back and read more about the author, and then I jump in. I tend not to look at reviews online or Google anything or look up at social media. I want my own fresh experience, but I do read all of the front and back matter that I can get my hands on to get myself ready. And then I typically get out my quote journal because I expect to find something that I love, and I get out my little pencil case. My brother and almost sister in law got me this adorable pencil case that says, I'm a planner. I plan things. And in there is everything I would need to read and write on the go. My favorite pencils, pens, sticky notes, a bookmark. There's a couple of book darts in there. That's part of my pre-reading routine is that I just take out that pencil case and I carry it with me to wherever I'm reading, along with the reading glasses, of course. So no big rituals other than to get the stuff I need. And then if I am reading for what I call a restorative reading session, where I want to settle in for at least a half an hour to get all of those good physical benefits, then I will light a candle or put on the diffuser or make the cup of coffee and smell the aroma. I do have some sort of ritual to signal to my body that we get to settle into reading and writing a little bit longer. And that signal varies depending on the season and the mood I'm in, but that usually rounds out my pre reading ritual. Number four, do you have a favorite pen? And then, of course, what is that favorite pen? I may surprise you and say I do almost all of my writing in pencil. I do almost all of my writing in pencil. I use a mechanical pencil because I love just being able to click and have that lead just keep coming in. And I like a medium width lead. I don't like those super fine pencils. I don't like the super thick ones. I am picky. I like the medium because I feel like it glides across the page. It can be difficult, a little bit painful for me to write by hand. And so I need something that glides really, really well. And I have found that mechanical pencils at a medium thickness glide across the page perfectly. And I can hear that sound. And there's research behind how good your brain feels when you can hear that sound of your writing utensil moving across the page. And mechanical pencil just seems to do it for me. Now, if I had to choose a pen, I do have a favorite pen that is purple ink. I had a friend give these to me and I am absolutely hooked. It is a Pentel RSVP fine point purple ink pen, and it glides almost as beautifully as my mechanical pencil, and it's purple. It's purple. What not to love, what not to bring a little bit more happiness into your writing routine. Now, number five is related to my one word themes. If you've been listening here, you know that every month I choose a one word theme to guide my life. And the best way for me to guide my life is through the reading and the writing and the learning that I do. So I have had some typical themes like cheer or fun or delight. And I've also had some not so typical things like sonder or this month's squeeze, right? Words you don't typically think of. And the question of how do I choose them? Honestly, they often choose me. I'm always on the lookout for what my next word might be. And so I just spend a lot of time thinking of what do I need? I love my be, feel, do framework. Who do I want to be? How do I want to feel? What do I want to do? And is there one word that could capture that? I also am active in social media, not too active, but I know my people and I know the things that we're talking about and the things going on in our world. And so sometimes I will let the calendar and the world drive a particular word that I choose. And sometimes the word is just dropped down from the bookish gods from a book that I've been reading. That's what happened in August if you listened to last week's episode and found out how and why I chose the word squeeze. Now, I will tell you this. I have been choosing one word themes for a couple of years now, ever since 2020, and I'm noticing a lot of trends. I've kept track of all of those themes, and I can see these underlying patterns that appear. These are the kinds of words I typically choose in the beginning of the year, in the summer, at the end of the year. And so one of my projects for the fall is to really look at those words and define those themes and to see if I can identify 12 core themes, 12 core areas, and then every year add a little bit of nuance, a little bit of shading to them and choose words that focus on those. So you'll probably hear more about this in the fall, but that is something that I hope to do now that I've had a couple of years of choosing one word themes under my belt. Number 6. This is a writing question, and it's what if I want to notebook, but I'm afraid to start? What if I'm afraid to crack open that new notebook because it's not going to be good enough? What if I'm afraid that I don't have the time? What if I'm afraid that I don't know what to write about? What if I'm afraid if someone sees my writing? There are so many different fears that we may have wrapped up into writing, or as I like to say, more of the informal notebooking. And so my answer would depend on what your fear is. But generally, I'm going to tell you to just do it anyway. If you're afraid of writing in that notebook, open up the first page, give a little squiggle, do something, write in it, note it. You're not going to ruin it, right? If you are afraid of someone seeing your writing, then put a sticky note on the front, like I do, that says, "This is my personal notebook. Read at your own risk." If you are afraid of not knowing what to write about, grab a sticky note, go to Google, write down 5 things that you could write about, stick it in the front of your notebook, and when you get stuck, not if, but when you get stuck, you have some ideas. So I would say my number one piece of advice to get over the fear of starting is to just start and do it anyway. And then based on what your fear is, we can troubleshoot. And so this might be an episode that I do an entire no, this might be a topic that I do an entire episode on. So if you have fears around starting a notebooking habit, send them to me. Let me know that so I can prepare. Number 7, I'm going to mix across reading and writing. What are your favorite podcasts, blogs, or magazines that you like to read about reading and writing? I love this question because I get so much inspiration from other people that I can then bring to my people. And so, favorite podcast, Modern Mrs. Darcy, right? Anne Bogle, absolutely adore her. I love Katie and Meredith. I'm currently reading. I love the Bookish Flights podcast with Cara Infante, who is here on the podcast. I would say those are my top 3 bookish podcasts. Now, blogs, I love Jules at Literary Lifestyle. She has been on the podcast as well. I don't know how she cranks out as much content as she does, but I'm glad she does. We've got the Book Gals, we've got She Reads, we have Book Riot. There are so many blogs that I follow. And in terms of magazine, I love the magazine that my own library puts out, Book Page, comes out monthly. And if you haven't heard of or subscribed to O Reader, OH, comma, Reader, that is just a really fun lifestyle magazine that comes out, I think, every 2 months, either digitally or this beautiful hardstock publication that you can get delivered to you that is just a reader's delight. Okay, let's move on. Number 8, how do you decide to abandon a book? This is a hard one for so many of us. And this was a hard one for me for a long time too, because I respect authors. I do not want to abandon a book. It took them a long time to write it and to bring it to us. And I want to give it a shot. But I've gotten better. I am much, much more readily able to abandon a book, likely because I've been finding out in the research. So if you listen to my recent episode on the magic of mirror neurons, you know that what we think influences how our day goes. And so if you are watching something, reading something, experiencing something, talking to someone who doesn't make you feel good, then you're not going to have the greatest day. And so it's a bit of a stretch to apply it to DNFing a book, did not finish. But I think it's important. If you're not enjoying the book, close it. It's not that you're ousting the author. It's not that you're saying it's a bad book. You don't even have to tell anyone that you did not finish a book. But you do owe it to yourself to be able to read a book that you want to read. And who knows, maybe later you'll be able to get back to that book and you'll find that it is for you now in this moment. So I do usually give it a couple of pages. I'm not you have to get to page 30, you have to get through half the book. I will just read what I think I need to read. And whenever I notice that nudge of, oh, this wasn't what I thought it was going to be, or this wasn't what I wanted or what I needed, I'll usually do a little skimming through the rest and see, am I just getting warmed up? Do I need to give it a little bit more? And I'll usually tell myself, give it a couple more pages and see. But then after a couple more pages, if it's not for me, I do put it to the side. Now, I don't tend to tell people about the books I do not finish because I don't want to put that out there that it's not a good book. It just wasn't for me at the time. So give it a little bit, then give it a tiny smidge more, and then let it go because it's your right as a reader to do that. Okay, next up, how do you track your reading? You know, I love tracking my reading. And this is one I now know I need to do an episode on because I have a blog post about this on my website, but I haven't actually talked about it yet on the podcast. I track my reading in a couple of ways. Number one, I have my bookish spreadsheet. I geek out on the details, the title, the author, the genre, how I rated it, what audience is it for? Is it digital? Is it in print? Who recommended it to me? And then I have a section to note the themes. Now, I love going all in like this because I read so many books, I can sometimes find it hard to remember them later. And I want to remember them. I want to keep those lessons close. I want to pass that book along to the next reader. And so I need to keep those details, especially now that I have a podcast about books. I also track my books on Goodreads because I love posting reviews. Number one, it helps me remember. Number two, it helps someone else who might need that book find it. And I also keep a collection on Bookshop so that if people want a beautiful kind of one-page glance of all the books that I've read, meaning myself, because I love looking at it often, I can go and just scroll and see all of those gorgeous covers. Now, you might be surprised that I don't really keep track of my books on paper. I have my own book planner and I use my book planner, but I don't use it on every single book. I want one quick digital place to access my books, and then I go in deeper on the books that mattered to me most. So you have all sorts of options for tracking your reading. And yes, there will be an episode on that soon. But if you'd like to take a look at my bookish spreadsheet and make yourself a copy, just go to elitlife.com, click on Free Literate Love, and you can make a copy of my Google Sheets spreadsheet and get started. The great thing is that I programmed it. So once you put your entries in, if you click on the next tab, those entries will be formulated into these beautiful pie charts so that you can see your reading life statistics at a glance. I love it. Okay, number 11, I think, is one of my favorites. What is your favorite notebook? So many. You really should be asking me, what is your favorite notebook for this purpose? What's your favorite notebook for that purpose? Because you know I have a lot of notebooks and I choose different kinds of notebooks for different kinds of reasons. But if I could only pick one and I could never have another kind of notebook again, I would pick a moleskin. I would pick a moleskin medium-sized notebook. I think it's called the cashier notebook. And if I had my notebook cover, which I have my beautiful yellow leatherish notebook cover, I would use soft cover and always keep it in there because it has a ribbon and a band that keeps it closed. But if not, I would get a hardcover. I love the feel of the paper. I love the width of the lines. I love the way the pencil glides. I love how it doesn't bleed through quite so easily, although keep in mind, I don't read pen. I love that it has the ribbon to hold my place, and I love how it has the band to keep it closed. So if I could only pick one, that would be it. Although I do have fun exploring other sites and shops that have notebooks, and I really love just experimenting with different paper sizes and paper weights. If you want to know more about the notebooks I have explored, then you can go to elitelife.com and in the search bar, type in sites or type in the word shops. I have a page called Sites, Stores, and Shops for Literate Love, and you can see all the different kinds of sites that I have ever looked at or saved because I keep them in a collection on my website. Now, a related question to that is, what's your favorite planner? And here's another shocker for you. I don't use a paper planner. Oh, I really, really want to, but it's not something that I have ever done and kept up regularly. That said, I do have a planner for my podcast that I use a lot, but it is nothing special. I hate to say that. It is special, but it isn't anything expensive or dramatic. It was 10 bucks on Amazon. And it's a monthly planner that has the month at a glance across a double page spread. And then it has a section for important dates, goals, tasks, notes, and more notes. And that's it. So I just have a monthly calendar that I use. Although I do want to start experimenting with a monthly and a weekly because I just love being able to have an artifact of what life was like at that time. And I love being able to hold it close. Right now, my life is ruled by Google Calendar because multiple people need to be able to schedule things. And so I need a paper calendar that's more about the daily events of my life while keeping the digital calendar that kind of holds the rocks, right? You know that analogy? My digital calendar will hold my rocks. And hopefully, the paper calendar that I give a shot in 2025 will hold the sand, all the beautiful stuff that sifts in. Number 12, how do you decide which books to keep and which books to donate? Well, I do have a blog post about this too that will turn into a podcast episode later on, and it's called Minimize Your Bookshelves Without Hurting Your Reading Heart. And it talks about how I clean up my bookshelf so I know which to keep and which to donate, right? So it starts with knowing your why, Marie Kondoing your bookshelves and taking them all off, and then figuring out which books have you read, which books do you still need to read, which books do you still want, which books were okay, which books did you love. I just asked myself a whole bunch of questions. But basically, it comes down to this. If I look at that book and I still want to hold it, I want to hug it, I want to open the pages, I want to see those sticky notes, then I keep it without guilt. If I look at a book and I don't really have that gut reaction, then I either save it for a little bit longer or I gift it ideally to the next reader. I absolutely prefer giving books away to specific people rather than just donating blindly. Although I do love to strategically place some books in free little libraries. So that's how I decide. It is a gut somatic reaction. And if I have that reaction, I keep it. And if I don't, well, then I pass it along. Next up, do you ever write digitally? Well, I do a lot of writing in Google Docs. That's my article writing, my blog writing, podcast writing, book draft writing. But my personal writing and my notebooking is always done in paper and pencil. But I will say I am very intrigued by the Remarkable notebook because it looks like it writes just as a regular, shouldn't say regular, a physical notebook. So I don't do much digital writing by hand, but I want to try a Remarkable. So if you have a Remarkable or you have some sort of app that really does mimic that paper pencil feeling and maybe even the sound, that would be wonderful. I would love to try it, and I would love for you to pass that along. Now, up next is, how do you find the time? That's the eternal question, right? Time is really our four-letter word. And I like to remind people that I do read and write a lot. But number one, my kids are grown. I did not write this much when they were younger. I did not read this much when they were younger. So the season of life that I'm in allows for a bit more reading and writing. Also want to remind you that my job so beautifully requires reading and writing. I teach teachers how to become literacy teachers, and that requires walking the walk and talking the talk and doing lots of reading and writing and teaching children's literature and reading children's literature. But I do also plan my day around these two things because they are so important. And for me, that comes in the morning. It comes in the morning because I know the rest of my day could get hijacked. And so I start off my day with reading and writing to make and find the time to do it. That may not work for you. You may need to find another protected time in your day, but don't stress about it, right? We only need 6 minutes to get the benefits of reading. We only need 15 to 20 minutes of writing a couple of times a month to get the benefits of writing. So start small, find 6 minutes a day, find 10 minutes a day, and then see how you could build on it. Now, last up is, how can I help my kids be readers and writers? I'm competing with activities. I'm competing with electronics. I'm competing with social media. How do we make sure that our kids also know the power of reading and writing? And I love this question because I struggle with this question myself. My kids have had their own ups and downs with reading and writing. Some of them love it, some of them don't. Some of them currently do it, some of them don't, right? It's an up and down dance. And there's three things that I like to tell parents and teachers. And this comes from the framework I have developed in my book, Leading Literate Lives. And we basically have to help students and children with three things: to build their literate habits, to read and write things they love, and to be part of a bigger reading and writing community so that it matters. So we have to teach them how to find and make the time to read, right? And how we can do that in really easy, simple, yet meaningful ways. We have to let them read things they want to read. We cannot always micromanage their reading life because it doesn't work well, right? Adults, we don't want people telling us which books to read. Neither do kids. Let them read what they want to read. And then number three, let them feel like it matters. Let them talk to people about books, not comprehension questions and assignments, but just talking. Let them reach out to the authors they love, go to events so that they can see who put those words on the page. And more importantly, help them make choices about their actual life that might be informed by those books that they've read. Books can change lives, they can change minds, they can change experiences, they can change trajectories. And so we have the opportunity to show kids that we can do this by modeling those three things in our own life as well. So I am not sure what number question we were on, but I know we went through a lot of them today related to reading and writing. And I'm hoping that maybe you had some of those questions and now they're answered. But especially, I'm hoping that you have more. And I'm hoping that you will share them with me so that I can collect them the right way so that I can kind of give people credit who have written those questions and actually reveal and share them on the podcast so that you can feel that same kind of special magic that I felt when I heard my question read on a podcast. So stay tuned for upcoming episodes that are based on some of these questions. You can expect an episode on, what do you do if you're afraid to get started writing? How do you track your reading life? And how do you decide what to keep, what to donate, and weed those reading shelves? Thank you so much for being part of this Get Literate community. I absolutely love when comments and questions come in, and I just feel honored that enough questions have come in that I can have a whole episode dedicated to Ask Me Anything, because that means we have enough readers, enough people who also love this topic, who are eager to reach out and learn more. And that just means the world to me. So thank you, everyone, for listening. And I will see you inside the next episode of the Get Literate podcast. And don't forget, send your questions. And in a couple of months, I'll collect them all and we'll do another episode just like this. Happy reading and writing, everyone. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Get Literate podcast. You'll find links to all the books, resources, and ideas mentioned in the show notes and at alitlife.com. And if you want more, you might like to join my Patreon community. There, you'll find additional inspiration for your reading and writing life, like bonus podcast episodes, book calendars, monthly book clubs, notebooking inspiration, live events, giveaways, and more. It's only $5 a month, and you get instant access to all of the previous content too. Learn more at getliterate.co. And one more thing, if you love what you listened to today, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast, or take a screenshot of the episode and text it to a friend. This helps the podcast grow, and it builds our bookish and notebookish community too. Thanks for listening.